So this morning, I'm only going to address that scripture text very briefly because we're going to have some folks share about the mission trip to Puerto Rico. But that is a challenging text, and I just want to share two things I've learned about it that may help you think about that story, which is, as I say, a challenging story in a different way. One of those is I was reading one time about the culture of that day, and there were other religions in Abraham's day that required a child sacrifice. And so maybe that is why Abraham does not balk or is not surprised by this incredible request from God, because other religions required that. The other thing, and this only just dawned on me a few years back, is that this story very much serves as foreshadowing, because later in time, God himself will offer his own son as a sacrifice, that God let Jesus go to the cross and suffer and die to display for us God's love. God goes all the way through with the sacrifice that he does not require of Abraham. Some things to think about with that text. But as I say, we had 11 folks. I'm so proud of the folks that attended and went on the mission trip to Puerto Rico. We had 3 last week. We had 3 who were there over the last 2 weeks. And then we had 5 more that this past week were in Puerto Rico serving those in need. And I think last week there were 57 and 58 this past week. And as I say, some of those extended over the 2-week period. For myself, I just wanted to share an observation that I noticed when we were at this camp. It's a Lutheran camp in Puerto Rico. This camp had a dormitory where a number of us were staying. And as you went into that dormitory, there was a little statue of Jesus. I think we have pictures of that. Yep. You may notice that the hands were missing off of this statue. I assume that they got old and fell off at some point, or come to think of it, they probably got knocked off in Hurricane Maria. But what it made me think every time I went in and out of there was a quote by a 16th century mystic by the name of Teresa of Avila, who said one time, "Christ has no body now but yours." That's us. We are Christ's body. No hands, no feet on earth, but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands through which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes, you are his body. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. And what I remembered every time we went in and out of that dorm was that we were Jesus' hands, serving and blessing. And all of us, whenever we serve in Jesus' name, are Jesus' hands. And I'm going to ask Leanne to share a little bit more.
I know one thing, it's cold in here. It was not cold last week. It was quite warm. Okay, so what I wanted to tell you about is we were broken up into 8 different work groups. Bill and I were on the same team, so I won't steal all of his thunder. But we went to our work site, and we worked at the same site all week. We got there the first day and found that we needed to tear off a roof that had been leaking and had been tarped over a number of times since the hurricane and needed to be repaired. So we started working to take off the roof, take out some debris from the home before we could start rebuilding the roof. So these people don't have the means to do this themselves. It's been 2 years, and they've had the leaky roof ever since then. The family that lived there was not home, but the mother lived next door. And she was so thankful that we were there to fix her son's home that every day she provided something for us. It was what she had. You know, she gave us coffee every day. She made food for us every day. We always smelled something good cooking, and she would get fruit out of her yard, breadfruit, and fry it for us and bring us snacks. She gave us water. She gave us fresh bananas out of the tree in her yard, and they were the best bananas, super sweet. One day she made us an entire lunch. She made rice and beans and chicken and pork and salad, and you can see the picture. Our plates were heaping, and we were disgustingly dirty and sweaty, and she didn't care. She invited us into her home and fed us and sat with us, and it was amazing. It really was. It was a fantastic experience. There was a lot of fellowship from all the folks that were there, and very rewarding. And as hot as it was and as sweaty as we were, I can't wait to go back next year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Thelma, who will share a little bit of her team's experience.
I had to sit in the back because it's so cold down here. We've been sweating the last couple of weeks. So of the 11, there were 3 of us that stayed for 2 weeks. Whether that was smart or not, we did. With our efforts, I don't have construction skills, so I was worried, what can I do in this Building Fuentes initiative in Puerto Rico? And so what they needed was drivers, and so 2-weekers needed to be drivers because you had to have a rental vehicle that was assigned to you. So that's how we helped. And in the first week, we rebuilt a roof with wood and metal. And as you can see in the slide where the red part is, arrow, it's on the top of the hill. So as you can see, you gotta take the material up. Whatever you take apart, you gotta bring them down, and the equipment. So here we are. The first 2 days, or the first day, we were actually given 2 teams to help take the material up. The plywood, the corrugated metal. It was really tough work. The young boys and girls had a lot more energy than we did. We would say we were halfers. Halfway, we'd stop. It's about 50 plus steps up that meandering hill. Then you think about, what can we do in a week's time with 7 unskilled construction helpers? But we actually managed to get it done. And the family, they weren't living there because it's uninhabitable. They're still broken. I mean, the doors and the windows still need to be replaced. So what we did was cover the roof, fix it so that the inside part can be worked out. And as you can see, go ahead, keep going with the slides. I picked out some photos last night. So this is taking things back down the hill and managing to meander along the side and watching the young boys and girls work. It was really an awesome experience. And it is our hope that this may plant a seed in your heart that perhaps with interest, with your time, that you too can help next year. The second site, continue. We weren't sure we were going to get it done because the weather also played a part. So, but we were able to manage it. The second week, we had to clean and power wash and reseal a very leaking roof. With this inside, there was so much water damage. In fact, the guys replaced 3 doors that had the door was peeling halfway through. And as they were replacing the door and it had rained, it was leaking through as they were replacing this door. And they said, well, we're replacing with new doors, now it's just gonna get wet again. But fortunately, with some magic, I guess, the good Lord looked out after us, and we actually was able to clean it, reseal it in between rainstorms, dry it, and then put the seal in, the primer and the seal. So as you can see it's nice and white. It may not be smooth. we were trying to use a sledgehammer and all kinds of stuff to just take things out. Now, it wasn't all work. We also had the opportunity to receive from our hosts. So I call it cultural engagement. And with 50 plus individuals, how do you synchronize and energize all over Puerto Rico with 8 minivans and 2 trucks and disperse us and get something done? Well, you need a team in the background. And Donna was I followed her around when my GPS wouldn't be working on my phone. And she was a godsend for me. And then we end up having some beach time, some time in the rainforest, some time at the Castillo del El Moro, which is in Old San Juan, enjoying some of the food and delicacy. That's called the Boobies from Heaven. It's really homemade popsicles that we were shared with by our Javier, the construction manager. It's actually really refreshing when we were all sweaty, sitting on the roof, enjoying the popsicle. Keep going. And some scenes in the sea. We also went kayaking, and in this bioluminescent lake. Was a mile kayaking into the lake and then back out. Unfortunately, the second weekend, the second tour week could not do that because it was lightning and thundering, so they had to cancel that. And that's the El Moro, and as you can see, the iguanas. So I hope this gives you a little scene of what we did and what we experienced, and it was definitely an awesome adventure for me, and I would do it again. Thank you. Bill?
So Thelma captured that really nice with all the slides and the videos. I guess the big thing that I wanted to express was the gratitude and the expression of open up their houses to us. I'm not originally from here, but I might as well be. I've been here for over 35 years. But this is my first chance to have experienced hurricanes in Maryland. So I'd liken that to when the hurricanes happen here, it's more a comfort thing. It's not a lot of survival. In Puerto Rico, it was more of a survival to the point where people had to move into different places that weren't affected, and they lost their houses to a certain point. You see a lot of things as you were working. You see a lot of blue tarps up, and it seemed like that was the best way that they could to try to protect their houses. So while we were there, noticed also that there were a lot of flat houses. So we, in our team, and I was working with Leanne in our team, we actually put up trusses to bring the house up and put an angle on it to try and make it drain better, right? To try and help it to work better in that way. And the policies and stuff there is different than here on the state side. But it is still to the point where we had to do our best to get them back in there. What I had also noticed while I was there was the teams really started gelling. Personalities, skills. Some had more skills than others. Others had no fear than others. So, and it was more like we became a small family. And that's the way I felt about it, because we had, our leader was a pastor from Pennsylvania, and his son. And we just looked out after each other as we were doing. And as Leanne said, the owner was so nice in bringing us things all the time. And also, when we got there, it was really evident that this was not a quick fix. This was not a weak fix for us. This was going to take longer than that. So we did what we could on the week that we were there. We even had at one point a tropical depression that was over the top of us, and we couldn't work. There was about 4 teams that couldn't work. It rained all day, and inside the houses are tiles that, with what you're wearing, you could slip and hurt yourself real easy. And a lot of these places is like a built onto another one on the ground, so they're second story, right? So the acceptance, the camaraderie, and the assistance is always going to be in my mind for going on this mission trip. And I had not really been on mission trips per se as organized as this. I've been on places to help, but this is something that is worthwhile to consider. And don't worry, it's like it's been said more than once, your skills will fit in. Whatever it is, it will fit in somewhere. And there was a saying, you know, like Pastor Stewart corrected me, on the shirts, I was saying our hands, God's work. The shirts was God's work, our hands, right? And I'd like to also mention the statue that was in front of our little dorm barracks. That caught my eye, but it didn't catch my eye until about the second or third day. Why were there not hands? And he put it right. I just thought that it was something they didn't take care of, but it turned out that it really is a little bit more meaning than that. So in what else I'd like to say is, it came from Matthew 25. And starting in verse 31, and I'd like to say this before I stop, as soon as I find it. God said, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to the one of the least of these who are my members of my family, you did it to me." Thank you. And next is Donna Bouchon.
Good morning. One of the things I found after doing mission trips like this is that for days and weeks after, I'm still processing what went on. And I do that by, I'll have a memory come back to me, or just an event that happened. And wanted to share an event that took me quite by surprise, was definitely a God moment. And it was the first week, and it was the first couple of days. I was working with Thelma's team. Our team was up on the hillside here working with this roof repair. And as you can see, it was straight up the hillside. There's no way to drive any supplies up there. You hauled them all up. And we had some of the more stronger, able folks up on the roof already working, and that left maybe 4 of us more mature people down at the bottom doing some of the hauling up. And so the way we were repairing roofs was to put up plywood. We were using 3/4-inch plywood. If you've ever done any construction work, 4x8 sheets of 3/4-inch plywood are about 65 pounds apiece. So hot, sweaty, trying to get them up. We would take breaks getting them up. And at one point, we had about 6 or so sheets left down at the bottom. I had gone down to kind of get things ready. And as I was standing there, there were 2 women halfway up the hill with 1 sheet. And this van came barreling through this narrow road that went by, and kind of went by and then stopped suddenly and then backed up. And this gentleman got out of the car, and he had a T-shirt on that made me think that he was with the church. He was a pastor, as it turns out, and they were in Vacation Bible School. And he said, "Do you need that plywood taken up the hillside?" And yes, I do. And he went to the van, said something in Spanish. Boom, all the doors opened up, 6 teenage boys pile out of this van, and they're like, grab the plywood up the hill, and we all turned around, and I took a picture of them quickly before they left. They got in the van and they left, and we were just standing there going, wow, that was pretty good. A little dramatic, but pretty good. So it was just one of those moments that you think, God was watching us, because we were wearing out. We were really wearing out carrying that plywood up. One of the second memories that just still is really fresh in my mind was the second week. We were working again on a roof, a house that had lost half of the roof. We got to know the owner, Julia. Her husband and her daughter are still stateside right now. They were in Connecticut when the storm hit their house and destroyed it, waiting for their 25-year-old daughter's second liver transplant. So they've had some hardships. When they came back to see the house a year ago, her husband was so distraught, he had a heart attack and had to come back for heart surgery. So they've lived ever since the storm pretty much in Connecticut, receiving medical care for family members, and then trying to come back and do something with this house that has just half a roof, and everything in the house is destroyed. Birds had moved in. The entire inside of the house was just covered in bird feces from the ceiling to through the walls and down. It was really a hazardous place to be. We had to wear masks and gloves and be very careful what we were doing. And when I first walked in, I thought, how do you even attack this? It was such a mess. But we did. We had a couple of teams there, and we started by taking the roof off, opening it up. We brought in a power washer, washed down all the walls, started bleaching things, started looking pretty good. We got the roof back on. Not until the last hour of the last day did we finish getting the last of the tin on that roof. But as we got the kitchen dried in, I was thinking to myself, the kitchen for me in my house is the heart of my family. I love being there. That's where the family is. And I was looking around this kitchen, which is now cleaner than it was. It's certainly not habitable yet. But I looked around, and the owner was standing over her rusted oven and cooktop with a rag, wiping off the dust and the water that she could finally get off and keep off. And the tears were coming down her face. And I went over to hug her, and I said, "It's not quite ready, but it's getting there. You will be able to come back to this." And she looked at me and she said, "I had given up hope of ever moving my family back into this house." And she said, you guys have shown me that there is hope and there's a way to move forward. And we experienced that many times in the 2 weeks that I was there, that people, you come into this just place that's completely destroyed, and you do lose hope. It's overwhelming. Where do you start? And what we were able to do is bring bodies in, clear it out enough to see that there was still a way forward. It needs to happen over and over again in many locations. And we're making progress. Lutheran Disaster Response has really amped up their social work, but every day they need help. We're the last team until mid-October that the Lutheran camp has going out to work. It's a busy time of year, people going back to school and back to work. But they have continuous programs going on all year round. They can support teams, and there's definitely plenty of work to keep people busy. Definitely a worthwhile. This was my second year being there, and we continue to plan on going back. So something to consider. Thank you.